that fills itself
Stay where you are.
with the living dead.
Directed by Jay Wofel, we are talking Ghost Lake from 2004. This is also known as Empty Lake. And this is a made-for-TV haunted lake movie, as you can probably tell from this title. So the story focuses on this young woman who feels guilty for the death of her parents. She went out for a night out, and whilst she was out, staying out, her parents died in a gas leak. Not really her fault, but she kind of blames herself for not being there. And after which she returns home and meets this guy on the road. And there seems to be something going on in regards to this lake, where she keeps seeing sort of ghostly images. Although she's not really sure if they are ghosts, they seem to be sometimes a little bit more overtly ethereal. Sometimes they seem like there's just someone there. And it leads to this mystery where there's this kind of almost like a curse on this lake, which comes and wants to drown people every 13 years or so. And as the movie goes on, you know, who's involved, who's a ghost, who's real, what'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? So this is a very low budget movie, and it's not really a film where I would suggest this is like a scary horror movie. If you've ever seen like the Lady in White, I think it's called, it was like a horror film that was eerie, but never really sort of a scary film. And this is kind of like this, partly down to the VFX and the budget and stuff, but it's more of a kind of supernatural mystery with kind of you know, a few sequences which are mildly scary, maybe for kids or something. But there is an attempt here to have a somewhat of a weaving story. I think the script isn't brilliant, if I'm honest, and I think that sometimes the story gets a little lost in the way that it's sort of telling the audience. But I think there is an idea here for at least for having this this interesting sort of story, which does actually incorporate real life events. This particular lake is based on true events, and where they've kind of made a man-made lake, and there is actually houses at the bottom of the lake that were kind of flooded and stuff. And the theory is in this movie that there's kind of like dark secrets were in these houses and things like this, and this has caused these kind of ghosts. So there's that, and the movie is, you know, it has an interesting idea that the modus operandi of these ghosts, what they actually kind of want, what their end game is, because they do seem to have a somewhat of a goal. And it's interesting to get an idea of like what's driving them, what is the kind of the reason why they're doing some, and that they, even when we towards the end of the movie we have almost kind of ghosts disagreeing with each other, so there's almost like a little bit of individuality still, but they still have a collective kind of goal. So there's some interesting kind of ideas here, I would suggest, in regards to story elements. The execution is a little lacking. And it's just not like mega scary ghosts. They're kind of like glistening and more ethereal at times. Which I mean, again, it's sometimes interesting visuals. I don't think it completely works, but there is some kind of fun visuals, and there are some practical VFX. We actually get a few like practical kind of like VFX corpses that sort of stand up and kind of do things and stuff. And they're a little bit laughable, but I appreciate the attempt here to have some sort of practical VFX. But let's kind of now talk about what doesn't work, and we will kind of just reiterate. I think one of the problems with this movie is that the story is just so muddled, and it is trying to have somewhat of a weaving narrative arc in regards to what's going on. But I don't think it fully succeeds. I think the movie kind of trips over its own kind of mythology and ultimately becomes a little bit sort of like lots of telling the audience about what's actually kind of going on, really, rather than showing it. And as such, it becomes a little bit lost in its own storytelling. So there's that. I think maybe the biggest thing and the most obvious thing that would put people off of this movie is the atrocious acting. This movie is not good in regards to its acting from the majority of the cast here. Yeah, the performances sometimes are even downright laughable. So there's that. The movie has a really cheap feel, and the best way I would kind of describe it, it kind of looks like a Canadian movie. It isn't. It's actually, you know, an American movie, but it has that Canadian sort of TV feel. Is the best way I would describe it, but it just looks kind of quite cheap. It looks a little bit kind of soap opera-y. The VFX, as I've mentioned, both the kind of digital effects and the practical kind of VFX, they don't look great, to be honest. You know, so the visuals of this movie are you know, again, you can kind of see what they're trying to do and the idea behind it, but the execution of it doesn't quite hit the mark, and as such it just looks like a very sort of cheap TV movie that really isn't particularly scary. As I say, atrocious acting and an interesting idea, but the story ultimately I think is just not told in an effective manner, and as such I'm going to give this movie a 3 out of 10. I think it's a relatively weak movie overall, but if you want an inoffensive sort of just somewhat kind of family-orientated ghost story, then, you know, maybe you'd want to put it on. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.